Hey everybody, Dr. Green here. This week in 3540, we are talking about testing and continuous integration. So some key concepts as you read through your text. Remember, the world is black, gray, and white. Automation makes the world go round, and CI/CD is the glue. Okay? So first things first, you're going to hear about three different types of testing in your reading. Black box, gray box, and white box. You'll see I've drawn up this chart here. Black box testing is closer to the user. White box testing is closer to the code, and gray box is in the middle. It's mixed. So for black box testing, when we have more user focused, we're testing things like functionality, input in boxes, output validation, state transitions, boundary cases, off by one errors. Any place that the user would interact with our software and may put in the wrong thing or have a bad experience. In gray box testing, we're looking at little add-ons left in the system. Developers like to do this. They leave files around. There's auditing trails that get stored in databases. There's lots of information in scraps. And here is where we want to pick up all those things. Especially if we're working on sensitive systems, we want to make sure that we're not leaving any random pieces of data around just to be shared with the world when they shouldn't be seeing it. That completely applies to systems that are HIPAA or FERPA protected, things like that. Once we get to white box testing, we're talking about unit testing, actually writing tests that run functions, make sure return values are correct, check for errors, all this kind of stuff, and go through them. Okay? So black, gray, white, that's how we test. Once we have our tests in place with our testing frameworks, and you may be using any testing framework, by the way. It may be PyUnit or CPP unit. It might be Catch 2. It may be Visual Studio Test. There's just so many, or JUnit. There's a different testing thing for every language. They're all fundamentally the same, and you'll see some of the details of that, particularly for Java in your book. But that's going to be part of your assignment this week, is learning how to work with those libraries. Now, once those are in place, automation makes the world go round. We want to build up a suite of tests, collect them all into a library that we can run whenever. One command should run them all, and we get regression testing for free. Well, what does this really mean? This means that as we go, we write tests to make sure our code is always working properly. As soon as we change or refactor something, some of those new tests or old tests will fail. That's called regression testing. Always being able to run all of the tests and see what happens. Now, normally in practice, we have tons and tons of tests. We don't always run all of them, though we try to run the most important chunks. Also, I should tell you, we always look at this metric called code coverage. Code coverage tells me how much of my code is tested. 100% code coverage is not a real thing. You should never have that unless you have a small project and you are perfect. In most cases, we shoot for 60 to 70% code coverage, which covers most of the main things. It's very hard to run test cases that cover all our code. Also, if we had tests that tested all of our software and all of the code in very complex systems, it would simply take too long to run. Okay? So there's trade-offs here, but this helps us guarantee the stability of our code. Being able to run these with one command means they're automated. So we get this and we get red lights. If you work in a company, you'll see this. They'll say, well, the tests ran and these ones are green, they failed. These ones are green, they're good. Or these ones are red, they failed. Okay? Then what we do is we take this testing and we start to roll everything you've now learned together. We take version control, we match it with build tools, and we match it with testing, and we put it into what we call a continuous integration and continuous delivery. That's CI/CD, which glues everything together. Now this graphic is from GitLab, and you'll see what you do is you create a branch of code. You push code changes, and then the system's set up so that it automatically builds and tests your code. The fixes get in there, it automatically builds and tests, right? This is a process, and we see what's good, what's bad. You can see the green checks versus the red X's. You review and approve that, you merge it, and then once it's merged, it's automatically deployed, whether that deployment means pushing to desktops, to the App Store, or to something else. Okay, so this process is amazing, and it is fundamental to any software process. Okay? If you can automate away as much as you can, it frees you up to focus on the really important, really complex, really complicated tasks. And this also makes sure that you're not breaking other features when you add new ones. Okay? So in a nutshell, this is what we're doing this week, tying it all together. It is really, really important that this week you watch and read all of the external resources I've given to you. Make sure you go through them. Make sure you talk a lot, talk to me a lot, and let's find out exactly what's happening so we can give you good demonstrations and you can make good progress learning how to use continuous integration, continuous development as you test your code and integrate it with build tools and version control.